let's say you got two houses. They dramatically look the same. They have the same floor plan, same size yard, same climate, same orientation to the sun, same amount of shade, same amount of exposure. Like, they are the same house. One is in a neighborhood where no one knows anybody. No one talks to anybody. You walk down the street, never see anyone. If you see somebody, they're dumping the garbage out, and you're lucky if you get it, right? Kids don't play. There's kids, but you don't ever see them. They're all inside, or they're all doing activities away from home. Yeah? Sterile. You have another neighborhood, same houses, same house. You know, live in that house. Neighbors are interconnected at a high level. Everybody basically gets along. You walk down the street, you see groups of people talking together. You see kids playing. You look in backyards, you see gardens. You walk through the neighborhood, and there's an area that was clearly designed to be a gathering spot. There's people there. There's paths and spaces through the neighborhood. There's an open field that kids can get together and play in. Where do you want to live? Now, a normal human being is going to answer that question one of two ways. The second one, with all that shit going on, or I don't like people, and they still don't want to live in the first one. They want to live out in the farms or something. Normal human beings are going to gravitate toward the opposite end of what's normal. So why is normal what people don't want? Because it was designed that way. You're being controlled. You're being manipulated. When you live in that suburban home on that 10th acre and you don't know the name of anybody that's house that property line touches yours or anybody across the street from you in those three houses, you don't even know those people. That is not normal. That is not normal. They have designed the system to work that way. They have designed the system so that if your neighbor puts the wrong political sign in their yard, you feel like going out in the middle of the night and pissing on it. This is intentional. And this is why all of the things that I'm talking about that are perfectly normal things in society, that is why a peasant in the 1600s in rural England ate better than most Americans do today. Infinity, okay? This is normal behavior. To see to your food security in your backyard, to see to your neighbor's security, because you know if your neighbor is secure, you're more secure as well. This is normal human behavior. To not hate somebody because they have a difference of opinion you is normal human behavior. The reason they have driven all of this divisive shit is because unified people are difficult to control, and the entire system is bent on your control. So you either build your own system or you will be controlled. I don't care how free, I always said, like, if you are free in your mind, you can't possibly be enslaved unless you believe yourself to be free in your mind falsely. If you are living and behaving in an abnormal manner that does not suit who you are as a being, you are not free. You're not free. You're not free. If COVID really affected your life other than employment, then you're not free. You guys know, I'm not talking out of my ass here. When COVID came in and they put lockdown, my life looked the same. Now, it helped to be in Texas. But even for that first month and a half, when they did like close the restaurants and shit, our life was like, we're doing what we want anyway. And we didn't care. We didn't sit at home and binge Netflix and get drunk all day. Right? We just went on with life. We homeschooled our kids, and it became actually a blessing because by having to do it for 6 weeks at the end of the school year, my son and my daughter-in-law got to see what it looked like and gave us their permission to homeschool them long-term. Right? That's because our actions and our thoughts are the same. And everything I'm talking about today that makes the planet more normal, because a healthy ecosystem is normal for planet Earth, involves the largest keystone species living and acting in a way that is normal for that species, normal and natural. You think about this fact. Humans are native to Earth. We are as native as a bumblebee. We're as native as a deer. We're as native as an antelope. We're as native as an elephant. Take the poster animal for your version of born free, wild America, whatever. The polar bear, the seal, I don't care, the freaking whale, the dolphin, whatever. There is nothing on this planet that is any more innately native to it than we are. And we are a keystone species in that everywhere we go, we drastically affect everything around us. We are the most significant keystone life form on the planet today outside of microscopic life forms. We are, in our arrogance, we think we're the keystone species. We're the keystone species that you can see before you put things under a microscope. The fungi and the bacteria of this planet are far more keystone than we are, but we're up at the top. How can the planet be environmentally healthy if the keystone species is not living environmentally normal for the species? And I'll tell you what's not normal. Growing giant fields of soy to make a white curd to eat as protein along with crickets in a giant steel building that acts like a city in of itself. That is not environmentally normal for the human being. The human being is supposed to go outside. The human being is supposed to pick things up and eat them off the ground. The human being is a horticultural being. We are a horticultural species. We are designed, if you look at a human and how we are designed, nothing else can cultivate, again, other than bacteria and fungi, nothing else can cultivate plants the way we can. Nothing else can cultivate animals through animal husbandry the way that we can. This is what we have naturally evolved to do. But we have taken our ability with our giant brains and our math and our propensity for laziness and somebody else doing it, and the fact that we are led and controlled by sociopaths and psychopaths, drastically pull us away from what is natural, normal behavior. And then we expect the people that did that to us to make everything super green and special. And it is an asinine thing. But I want you to think about, like, suburbs can easily produce a quarter of their own food. And this is what I mean. Not every family producing 25% of its own food. Every suburb having enough people active and exchanging that overall the suburb itself consumes from outside 25% less resources in total. It's totally doable. Is it doable in 10 years? Without, like, my ability to brainwash everybody, no. And nobody has that power. So tactically, would it be doable? Yes. But this is a 7-generational project, in my view. But if not us, who? And if not now when? Who starts? If it's going to take 7 generations, we should have started 3 ago. Instead, we divorced ourselves from it 3 ago. And we lost it. It's going to take time to get it all back. You can lose it way faster than you can build it back. But it is doable. Backyard gardens and perennials, urban farming and spin farming. This is where this goes to a different level. If you look at people like Curtis Stone, who he doesn't do it anymore because he's decided to go off into his own, like, kind of remote property and what have you, but he made a living farming. He made a living farming. He owned no land. He didn't lease land out in the country. He leased land very cheaply in people's backyards and located his farm, which was basically 3 or 4 properties, some total about like 3/4 of an acre, I think, at its height, right where the restaurants that he was selling most of his food to were. There's no reason that model doesn't work anywhere and everywhere. Suburbs largely have available irrigation. They have a little bit of open space. A person wants food, doesn't want to do work. A good spin farmer can come in. Well, I can put in 8 garden beds back there, and I'll give you X percentage of the food, and the rest of it I sell in return for the use of the land. Then you start getting to where a few people are doing an awful lot, but everybody's contributing. The person that gave up the space in their land is contributing. Don't ever think that they're rent seeking or some other bullshit leftist term. Planting common ground, nature strips, etc. There's so much land out there right now that's in these suburbs and all that nobody really does anything with. Somebody reluctantly mows it. You have these, like, I don't know what we actually call them, what the technical term is, but I know the British and the Australians refer to them as nature strips. And that's where you have your yard, then you have a sidewalk, then you have a little piece of grass between the sidewalk and the road. There's no reason all of that can't be planted to perennials. And it would look better. It would block views into your yard from the street. It would reduce foot traffic going places it doesn't supposed to go. There's a lot of places that have plenty of common ground, parks, etc., that could be planted to things like in the south, pecans, in the north, walnut, etc. We used to pick stuff like this all the time in community events when I was a kid. That's the 1980s, folks. I'm not like, well, back in 1884, Jack Spirko and his kids, we went out and we picked blueberries up on Broad Mountain. I'm talking 1986. There's no reason we can't get some of us back to where I was in 1986. None. And then encouraging forage. That's another thing. Like I'm talking about, picking the blueberries up on Broad Mountain. That wasn't really anybody, the neighborhood. That was, we all got together and went out and there's so much that can be done with this. So there is no reason that the average suburb in America couldn't produce within the boundaries of what we call that suburb 25% of its own food. And the way I think to start out with this is instead of suburb, the subdivision, and within the subdivision, even the neighborhood. Subdivisions have gotten so big that they're not even neighborhoods anymore. They're multiple neighborhoods. They don't call them neighborhoods, but when you think about a neighborhood is about, you're in Dunbar's number world. You're like 100 to 200 individuals make up a neighborhood. That's where everybody knows each other. Even when I was a kid in PA, friends that you were really close with that you knew well, you still had your neighborhoods. Like people would say, well, Race Street was one of the neighborhoods in Pottsville. And Race Street was a street, but if you said Race Street, it didn't mean that you actually lived right on Race Street. It was that you're part of that area over there, which clearly was where all the white supremacists lived. It had nothing to do with cars going fast or anything, right? So like the Race Street neighborhood or the Cemetery neighborhood or like up where I was in Jonestown, like these were all neighborhoods and people within those neighborhoods intimately knew each other. So if we can start with, let's get the neighborhood to 25%, let's get the subdivision at 25%, let's get the suburb to 25%. We can do this, but it all starts with some people who are the pioneers, the people that get the arrow in the back, right? The ones who go first. And Larry's asking where in PA. I was from Pottsville, Minersville area, Schuylkill County. So he says Lehigh Valley, so that's not far away. And I did live north of Allentown in a place called Northampton for a few years when I worked for Fluke Networks. So that's definitely Lehigh Valley right there. Anyway, that's always fun to find people that you have that overlap. But let's talk about the economics, though, right? Like there's solid economics in this. It's okay to have an export economy, especially if we're talking about instead of exporting from Texas to Europe, we're talking about exporting from neighborhood A to neighborhood Z, right? Like just in the other side of town or whatever. And there's a lot of product that can be produced beyond food, like compost production. There's a lot of opportunity, and there is a real propensity to create something that looks like a co-op, but maybe you don't call it a co-op. Maybe we use, Fedimints and things like that in the Bitcoin blockchain world to create some of these things from an economic standpoint for revenue share or something like that. But imagine it's not even a neighborhood, a block, a typical suburban block, little bit bigger yards, average yard being 0.2 acres, right? So 2/10 of an acre, typical block. I don't know how many houses that would be, but what if everybody on that block, what if half the people on that block took all of their compostable waste once or twice a week and dumped it off in an approved area where one person took care of composting? How much compost is that? How much compost is that before everybody's garden's fertilized, right? Everybody's shrubs, everybody's bushes, including the rhododendrons, etc. Everything's taken care of, and there's still a surplus. Is there value in that? If somebody in that block is growing rabbits and another person's growing quail, and we throw that into the mix, and maybe one or two people keep some chickens, and we throw that into the mix, we're talking about some grade A high quality, no worry about residual herbicide, awesome compost. We're talking about something that has value by the bag and not the ton. There's a revenue stream in that. Worms. Anybody can do worms. Worms are expensive. A pound of worms will cost you about $40. Again, the same material that we would use for compost, much of it can be fed to worms. That generates worm compost, but it also generates worms. Black soldier flies, biochar. Right? All of these things have an economic value to them. Livestock for sale. If I was raising rabbits, I would never sell rabbits for meat. I would always sell rabbits to people who want to breed rabbits, or people who want rabbits for pets, or people who want rabbits for shows. I might eat them. I might exchange them with my neighbors, but as a marketing practice, I know there's more money in this doe and this buck are both in great physical condition. They're the breed you're looking for, and they have different bads. Here you go. I know I can make more money doing no processing, no skinning, no clubbing, selling those bunnies alive to somebody. If you want to eat them, you do what you want. Than I'll ever make selling meat rabbits frozen in a cryovac bag. I know this. I've priced it. I know this, right? K-Bonk says, black soldier fly, too bad. Those breeders are so expensive. I'm not sure what you're saying there. I thought I did. But there's a lot we can do with the black soldier flies as well. Backyard nurseries. Just had Nick on for 2 hours yesterday. Nick Ferguson. We talked about the fact that, propagating plants is like printing money. Part of what I was explaining to my granddaughter today was how you can make money propagating plants. And I was showing her all the plants that Grandpa has that are really cool, that people like. And I was explaining to her what advertising is and how valuable it would be for a little girl who had a plant business to have a grandpa who's a podcaster that could say, my granddaughter is selling plants and seeds, and sell all the inventory really fast and not having to pay for advertising. But we're struggling a little bit with homeschool because somebody doesn't really want to work hard on her reading and her math. Well, now somebody's really motivated because we had a discussion about how would you sell the plants, right? So we had that discussion. And so we talked about what a website was and how you buy stuff online. And boy, that clicked quick. She understands that. I see this thing. If mommy or daddy says, okay, we can click a button and it comes. And she understands that money goes. So somebody would click a button and you would get money. Yeah, she's really happy. It's okay. So when you get the order, what are you going to do with it? And that took a little bit of explaining. Took a piece of paper and said, what does that say? She didn't know. I said, what if that's an order? What if somebody just ordered 6 of the mint plants you made, but you don't know what they are? Aren't they going to be mad that you have their money and you didn't get it to them? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So fine. Now how are you going to get it to them? She had to think about that. I'm like, they're in New Jersey. You're in Texas. Are you going to drive it to New Jersey? She's like, no, that's dumb. And she laughed at me, And then we got to send it to them. Okay. So when you send it to them, what do you have to do? She's like, put it in a box, right? And it took a while to get to the point. Well, how's the guy at the mail place going to know where it goes? You have to, now we need to be able to write. Yeah. Well, how do you know that you got the right amount of money? How do you set the price? Math. So all of a sudden, reading, writing, and math, really important. So it can be used as an educational tool. But don't tell me for a minute that if she'll take the opportunity that's sitting in front of her, I got a 6-year-old right now, but don't tell me I can't have a 10-year-old knocking down $20,000 a year. Don't tell me I can't, because I'll prove you wrong if I won't do it for them. But I think that's even a low ball. That's a low ball estimate. There is an economic component to all of this. Prepared food products. There's a component. Again, livestock for sale, right? There is money right now. Now, what I've learned from people around me that have lots of chickens can't get rid of their chickens. Chicks, whatever. Nobody wants them. Why? Because people, they buy things that have a name. So like one of my good friends he calls them barnyard mixes. They're great birds, but I want red Rhode Island Reds, or I want this, or give them a name. Give them a name. But I mean, when I went to the feed store last time, I always go back. They have a little pet area with snakes and stuff like that. I take the kids back there, and that's where they have the chicks and the ducklings and stuff. And there was signs that said they were all sold. And Tegan goes, can we get one? And it was really easy to say, no, we have babies at home. And look, they're all sold, right? And the guy heard me that worked there. He said, they're sold for the next 6 weeks. Everything coming in is sold before it gets here. So there is an economic component just to things like ducklings, chicks, goslings, guineas, etc. Especially if you're smart about how you market it. Prepared food products, ecotourism like Vibro and Airbnb, etc. We talked about that. There's so much that can be done with this. And again, the thing is, this approach creates a genuine community vibe. I think humans are not just a horticultural species. I do think we are an energetic species. I think we do have a certain vibrational state. And I don't want to get real metaphysical or anything. And I don't even really mean it that way. I just think that all living beings have an energetic state. Because if you shut the energy off, you're dead. You're an electrical system. The way that you send a thought in your head that I'm going to turn my left hand into a fist is done with electrical communication. And the very action of closing the hand into a fist and how tight you make the fist and the ability to, it's all electrical. So we exhibit an electrical vibration. And we do have anything that has an electrical state, a vibratory state, can be in sync or out of sync. And most people live most of their lives completely out of sync with their natural state. And this is why, if you've ever been in like a miserable mood and you separated yourself from the thing making you miserable and you went somewhere wholly natural, like a walk in the woods, and all of a sudden you come into a sense of well-being, I believe that at least partly it's because, and I think there's a mental component too, that you've moved into the proper state. And all of these things we're talking about are very human behaviors. And so when people start to coalesce around them, you just get this community vibe. People start talking to each other again. And there's been a lot of places where things like this have been done with guerrilla gardening and whatever. All of a sudden, people are standing out in the road, at the edge of the road or whatever, because in the road you get run over, talking to each other, having conversations. And people that have lived in places their whole lives didn't know their neighbors, and all of a sudden they do. So there's definitely a lot of that as well.